welcome back to another episode of What Do I Know with me, Joanne Pei, as I continue to dig and ask questions to find answers that I don't know. Well, today, my team at Zodapop by Zero Media, they're very, very excited, and so am I, because we've got some bling in the house. My guest today is a reality TV star from Netflix reality TV series Bling Empire, which features the lives of real rich Asians living in LA. I know. Well, hold that thought, okay, because I have my thoughts to share as well. Let me finish my introduction. You'll see my guest in season 1 navigating her tumultuous relationship with her boyfriend. And in season 2, well, is it on? Is it off? Well, there's a cliffhanger going on. It's already up on Netflix, so you can catch that. You know, I wonder, what's it like being on reality TV? Because I don't do that. And, you know, having your private life on display sounds really uncomfortable for me. So how much of that is real? I have Kelly Millie in the studio today to answer those questions. So let's dive in. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Joanne. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm really excited and a little nervous to be talking to you because I've never met like a reality TV star before. I've never done reality TV, and the idea of it actually scares me because, you know, having cameras follow you around all the time and like, what is that like?
I feel like you're kind of used to cameras by now, right? You're such a respected actress and you kind of grew up in, having cameras around.
But it's like scripted and I'm playing a character. Like I'm not myself, right?
Okay.
And then with you, I tell the team this as well because I watch your show and I feel so invested in the characters. I mean, not just you, but like I feel like I know everyone.
Right.
I feel like I know everybody's lives, even though we know it's just a snippet of it that we are seeing, right? But then because it's like who you really are in that sense, you're not playing a character, or so we think. You know, that it's like I feel like I know you already.
I think that's a beautiful thing about reality television, because you could able to see like kind of private lives and open the doors that you're to a world that other people might not be able to see.
But doesn't that make you uncomfortable? Like everything is on display for people, and especially with you especially your storyline is all about like relationships and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, to me especially, that's something very private. Like me and my husband, we are both in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And we try our best to be as private as possible because that's a part that we want to protect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just so hard to put that part of your life out for everyone to like judge and comment and talk about.
Yes, and I think also with the Asian culture is very much let's not kind of tell our problems to other people and be very private, but also at the same time I think with Bling Empire is such a unique opportunity because it puts Asian in the media, in the mass media, and give more representation. And you'd be surprised how many people reached out to me afterwards through DMs and how my story related to them, and has now, especially with my season 2 and hopefully more seasons, how much it's inspired them. If I can only inspire one person, that's enough. And same thing with Christine's storyline about infertility and having a hard time with pregnancy, as well as Kim's storyline finding real parents. That's inspired other people to look and find their parents, because they don't want to miss out a chance, because Kim's dad unfortunately passed away, and she never got the chance to meet him. So I think by sharing our real stories and our life, it helps open that up to other people. And I think if it just inspires and help people, I think it's great. And also another thing that's very personal to me is because growing up in the US, I was born in China, I moved to the US at a young age. I didn't really have role models to look up to. So when I was growing up, and then back then it wasn't like how is it now? There's no internet. So when I was looking at magazines, when I was looking, going to the theaters for movies and TV shows, I didn't see anybody looking like me. And now I think of a chance to give the younger generation that lives in America as well as other places to have, familiar faces they look up to and role models and feel like they really belong.
I mean, I admire that about what you want to sort of advocate, but I have to be very honest about what I thought about Bling Empire when it first came out. I was like, what? Like a show about rich Asians, like again, and someone's from Singapore and like, is like rich and living in LA. And I'm like, but that doesn't really reflect Singapore, like Singaporeans, like, because a lot of us are, not rich
Yeah.
and living that kind of life. So then I was quite skeptical, about Bling Empire, and I didn't know what sort of values it was going to be able to impart to the audience. And I didn't watch it, and obviously I watched it because of you, and I was gonna talk to you, so I binge watched it, and I actually fell in love with all the characters. We know that there's some cat fights going on, and there's a little bit of that drama there, but I could see where everyone was coming from, and there were some moments in there that were very relatable, even though, I mean, it's a completely different life from what I lead, but I could relate to it. Like there was this part where like Kim was in Anna's house, and then she found the penis pump, and then she refused to apologize for it, right? And then everyone was like, you should, you this and that, and she just didn't see anything wrong with it. And so that really stood out for me because it was a very obvious like perspective difference. So that was quite real for me. And then the other part was when Kevin, it was really cute, like he returned the gifts that Anna bought him, and because he wasn't sure like what does it mean, like are you testing me, is this a test of friendship and all that. And it was also something that was very real, because I felt like if I were in his shoes I'll probably do that too, because you just don't know the roles, especially in the world of the rich and famous, that there are rules that we are not familiar with. So were there any moments, I mean, they don't have to be yours, personally, but were there any moments in the seasons that you really like and appreciate?
I think season 1, one of the scenes that I really was touched was when Cherie gave birth. And then the funny thing is, people were like, how is reality TV made? Is that fake? I'm like, how can you fake a birth? But I thought that was such a beautiful moment, she gave birth on camera and, bring life to this world. And that's such a precious moment.
But I was like, how come she looks so good, like giving birth? Like,
I wish I looked that good in the future.
I was like, is that real? Right? Because it's quite different from my own experience. So that is my sort of opinion about Bling Empire. But I do know that it's your idea, right? You started having this idea, and you took it to the producer, Jeff Jenkins, and it happened. So, we all have ideas too, right? And then sometimes when it's in actions, it's not quite what we expect. Was there anything like that for you with Bling Empire?
I think, one of the things I think to address earlier on with, with, I guess, like Bling Empire, yet another rich show,
Yes.
right? I think we're at the very, very beginning of having Asian content in mass media. We're at the very, very beginning. And obviously it's Bling Empire, the success of Bling Empire, we really have to thank Crazy Rich Asians, right? It is a door, in a sense, to open up that world to other people that I think people in the mass are more interested in right now because of the movie. But we use that to showcase Asian culture, showcase real life problems. And I'm hoping we have more seasons, because the more seasons we have, the more we can keep expanding on different storylines, and you can see the different dynamic of different characters. And it becomes in a way that it's not going to be about money anymore. I think with especially my storyline, none of my storyline was ever about money, right? So I think that's just at least the beginning of it. And as far as how the show started, yes, it's always take hard work. How especially in the entertainment industry, a movie, how long that takes, a TV show. So putting it together was difficult, because a lot of time when you're really wealthy or you're from family money, the Asian culture tend to be very kind of closed
Private.
doors, very, very private. So getting these group of friends to trust the process and believing in me was definitely a challenge. And obviously with Netflix gave us a huge chance, because buyers don't like to buy things that are very unfamiliar, that doesn't have a proven track record, because at the end of the day, Hollywood is still a business. So having Netflix as a partner and giving us that chance was very, very important. But all the ideas always the start, and then I say ideas 10%, and 90% of it is really hard work, and then persistency.
How did you convince them, since you said like you probably didn't have any track record to show?
Yeah, not for reality, but for scripted, yes. and obviously partnering up with great people. And yeah, just being able to, for them to giving us a chance. And I think also our cast speaks for ourselves, right? And every single cast member has delivered. Everybody was very open because we all, decided, hey, if we're going to do this, let's all do it. Because we only have one chance. Because if this show failed, we're not going to have another chance. And it's also going to stop other Asian cast shows to be greenlit.
So you're saying that all of them are your friends. So who decides on what gets shown, and like, was it intentional for you to keep that money part out from the story?
I think, once the show is sold, you know how it is, you kind of have to let go of control. Because same thing with, a scripted stuff. There's so many people in the room, and so it takes an army to make a project to come to life. It's still an aspect of you. So whatever you put out, that's what they can edit, right?
Right. Can you ever say, like, no, I'm not comfortable with that part, and I really...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because, end of the day, they're following your life.
Yeah.
If that's not really you, then you don't have to do it.
I do really appreciate that. There were moments, like you mentioned earlier, about the infertility that Christine was going through, and Kim trying to find her parents, and also Kevin was looking for his birth parents as well.
Absolutely.
So, and with you and your storyline in your relationship, which is like the bulk of the story. Every time I see, it's always about like you and Andrew, and I was like, are you like even tired of people just asking you about it all the time?
Oh, of course. And especially the thing is that people have to remember season 1 was filmed at end of 2018 and 2019. So we're in 2022. So, I'm still, people still asking questions. I'm like, well, that happened, and especially on social media, people are still trying to give me advice. And I was like, okay, that was like over 3 years ago. Like I got it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that kind of gets a little bit tiring, but I'm happy people are so invested.
Yeah, it is. And also because it's not just about this relationship, but then there are signs from there that is very familiar to some people because they go through the same cycle, right? Like, this person's not right for you, but then, you just hang on to it, and then you break up, and then you get back, and then, all that. And, you've obviously been through that. And also you've been very open about your divorce before. So having gone through like relationships like that, like have your ideals for relationship changed?
I think every relationship, you learn something new and you find yourself, right? When you're younger, I think date and experience, because at the end of the day, that really shapes you. Every single relationship I went through, even the one I went through with Andrew, I'm so grateful because I wouldn't be who I am today without them, right? And, I think with the thing with Andrew, it really kickstarted my mental health journey and self-discovery journey. And I think that is so important. And that's also why I'm so passionately talking about it nowadays, because growing up, again, in the Asian culture, we never learned how to express our emotions, and we never learned the importance of mindfulness and mental health, because I think there's such a big stigma on mental health. When you say the word mental health, people say, oh my God, something's wrong with you. Like, this is so bad, But mental health is just as important as your physical health. It's just basically your mindfulness and getting to know yourself and check in with yourself. And, I didn't really start this journey until in my 30s because of my relationship with Andrew, and because Bling Empire also pushed me going to therapy. That was my first ever therapy session, was the film for international television,
Oh.
And but that really kickstarted, my journey. And then I realized, hey, I've been, living with myself for 30 something years. I really didn't know myself, so afterwards I really spent time to get to know me, because that's really the foundation, of everything else in your life.
I mean, tell me about therapy, because it's also a bit taboo, especially here. Like when you talk about going to therapy, there must be something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Right. But then there's also this other talk that sometimes therapy is not for when something is wrong. It could be preventive too.
Absolutely.
Like, so what is therapy like in that you did and tried?
Yeah, I think everybody should go to therapy, because therapy, again, it doesn't have to be something's wrong with you. It's just basically talking it out, and with a professional, because a professional can really know, like, everything is connected to your childhood. It is so weird, of how you grew up. And again, if people doesn't want to go to therapy, I would really suggest them to learn about psychology. There's information on YouTube, podcasts, read books. You can also self-study as well if you don't want to work with a professional. And then I think also finding the right therapist is also very important, because it's like, maybe go to a few and then find the right person for you. It's not like one person works for all kind of thing.
What should we be looking out for when you talk about like finding the right therapist?
I think for me at least, I'm very logical. I'm very like I like things very structured and organized. So when I go to a therapist and I feel like I'm actually learning, and I'm not just talking about like just talking in circles and they're just listening to me, but when they're actually like, go read this, go read that, and for me, want to give you a really good example. For me, like I used to have anxious attachment style, and that was so. I don't know if you're familiar with attachment style.
Tell us a bit more.
There's 4 different attachment styles. One is secure. Secure is what everybody wants to be because that's the way how you securely attach yourself to other people, especially in relationships and feelings. But it could be friendship, all that stuff. The other one is anxious attachment style, meaning that you are always like anxious. You don't really enjoy the process of dating because you feel like that person's gonna get away from you, and you have to almost overgive in a sense. So I had an anxious attachment style because my mom growing up, tiger mom, you feel like you're never good enough, like you're always working, and they're like nothing's ever good enough, like my friend's kid is always doing better, all this. And then also my dad leaving at a very young age, when I was a young age. So I had I always trying to chase. And then an anxious attachment style tend to attract themselves to avoidant attachment style. Avoidance, the people who are very closed out to feelings, they're really close. They're like, they kind of like, they don't really open up, and they don't feel comfortable, and they feel very scared to let their feelings out or really attach to somebody. So they're avoidant. So the funny thing with avoidant and anxious is that they attract themselves to each other because they re-secure what they think love really is. So avoidant people, so I was like, oh my God, people are just too close to me, too like da-da-da, like they're always like, they're too clingy. And that's because I feel this is what love is, right? And where anxious, it's like, love me, love me, love me, and then they chase avoidant. But then in their head, they think this is what love is because maybe when they're younger, this is what they felt love was because they're getting it from, you chase your mom's affection, but your mom's always like, this is not good enough. That's not good enough. Right. And then the fourth one is just a mixed up person that's avoidant and anxious. But, like getting to know something like this and having a term, and you're like, oh my God, this is me. Now you're aware of your habits and your patterns, and you can start changing it. And same thing with love languages, 5 love languages. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but everybody shows a different side of how they receive love, right? So all these things you learn in therapy. Or again, if you don't want to go to therapy, I really suggest reading books, listen to podcasts and watching YouTube, because there's so much information out there.
I saw the therapy sessions that you have with Andrew as a couple. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, is it so calm? Like usually when couples go in for therapy, because I always sometimes feel like, couples fight, right? Like I fight with my husband as well. Right. And then because you're so into it, like there's no third party to sort of see and help you out. And obviously you're stuck in that mindset of what you have, obviously, right? And you can't see my point and I can't see your point. That's why we're arguing and we're having this problem. And then yet on the other hand, it's like, oh, we don't want to be like telling someone else what's going on, because there was this thing where Andrew said like he didn't like you telling your friends about what's going on. So there's also that aspect of it. So like, can such problems be resolved in therapy, or like what is the best way for a couple to resolve like conflicts like that?
I think therapy is great. I think yes, you can resolve problems in therapy, and also again, obviously mine was filmed for a television show, but normally therapist obviously has a confidentiality with the patient. So whatever you say in the therapy session is completely private. The therapist can lose his or her license from it if they tell your problem to other people, right?
Were there things that she didn't tell us or didn't say because she couldn't, like because of this private thing?
I mean, that session, because I think there was a few therapy sessions that was filmed, but the first one was over 3 hours. But another thing you got to remember with reality shows that we only have 8 episodes, which is 5.5 hours to fit so much in. So a lot of things are really cut up. If it's not, I mean, there's so much that was discussed that didn't make it, right? And like people have to remember, like if it doesn't move the storyline forward, it's probably going to get cut. because it's just so short.
Wow. So you mean you actually went through like that session with Andrew, like it was a 3 hour session?
Yeah.
But then we only saw like that.
Like probably 30 seconds, 1
Yeah,
minute,
I
you
know.
know?
It was so short. And I was like, how did you guys like get there? I mean, it's weird. Like you would think like I'm in this industry and I probably understand how it works. But then I feel like I sometimes get tricked into it as well. Like I think, oh wow, like how come, they're so cool and they're so calm and you could talk about it and there was all these, like, is it that quick? And yeah, because I have been thinking also like how sometimes having therapy can be beneficial, but then sometimes convincing my very Asian husband
Right.
to accept something like that could be challenging because is like, I don't have a
course.
problem. Like, why do I need to see someone?
Of course.
Right. So you would say that it's because of this awareness of like taking care of yourself, mental health, and talking to a therapist that really got you out from a toxic relationship?
I would say yeah, because you can't control other people. That was the first thing. What you can only control is yourself. And in the situations like that, it's that what I can control is myself and is bettering myself. So when my mindset changes and I'm more educated and more aware, then I can make decisions better, right? Because at the end of the day, I can never change somebody else. I can only change myself.
Did you feel like a lot of that, like there's this Asian thing about us that we want to please, we want to give, and
Yeah.
we want someone to accept us, and we tend to think more from the other person's
Yeah.
perspective, and because of that, we are shortchanged in that sense, or like we are treated this way in a relationship.
I absolutely think so. And especially because, again, when I was, and my ex wasn't Asian. So we grew up in a very different mentality. And then the US mentality is very individualized, where the Asian culture is very a communal, thing. And then there's another thing, because of this, I developed so there's different kind of codependency. Mine was a caretaking codependency because I valued myself by what I can give to others. What I should be valuing what I can give myself or what I can do, right? I accomplished this giant deal. I never felt accomplished. However, if I was helping somebody else, I will feel, oh, I feel so accomplished, and that's not everything's about balance. And right now, because I talk a lot about self-love, self-love and self-care is not selfish. And that's one thing that we have to get across, because we used to think, especially as a woman, that you think that, taking time for yourself or self-care, self-love, it's very selfish, but it's not. Because if you can't be the best version of yourself, you can't give the best version of yourself to others.
Yeah, I do think that as well, especially when we become mothers. You have so much more responsibility and you just feel like everyone else in the family needs you more than you should be giving time for yourself. So that's also one thing I've learned. But you talk about this attachment styles and how a lot of our childhoods affect who we are today. We grow up like a big part of our lives, right? That way. Like, how do you actually change that? Like, now that you're aware, how do you get out of that space?
Well, first step is always awareness, and then afterwards you start knowing, oh, naturally I would do this. But wait, but that's falling back in an old habit. So every little decisions you make, make small decisions, and just repeatedly making these decisions change your habit, right? So by me first aware, like let's say, I do something like, okay, that's what my old self will do. But now, because I'm aware, I'm going to make a different decision. I'm going to react to the situation differently. And then when you keep making this decision, the right decision, then now it's going to be second nature to you, and it becomes your habit,
Right.
and becomes you.
Like,
It's rewiring your brain.
But you're really logical. But there are people who are stuck in the relationship and their heart is telling them something else. I mean, logically, I know I shouldn't this and that, right? But their heart is telling them something else. Like, so do you have any advice for people who are in that sort of position where, they're following their heart and it's so hard to break out from that?
Unfortunately, there's so many people like this, and people, I got I can't even tell you how many DMs I've received from, women that unfortunately that what they saw the little bit on television reminded them of their past relationship, the current relationship, and people that's been married and still married for 10 plus years and that's still going through that cycle. My advice, again, it's probably not the only one, the only right one, but my advice is that just, again, you can only control yourself. So I would just really gonna get to know myself and be the best version of myself, because then you can make the right decision with a clear head. And because with the relationship, it always takes two to tango.
Yeah.
You know, I understand it's always easy to point the fingers to the other person, but sometimes you have to point the fingers to yourself. And I know that when you're in situations like this, you might feel like you don't have a choice, but you really do. And unfortunately, for toxic relationships, it takes about 9 times the average for you to get out, like 9 breakups, and 9 you're like, I'm not doing this anymore, to break out. But every single time you do it, it is going to get better and better. But my really advice is just to kind of really get to know yourself, because again, that's the only person you can control.
Do you then think that there is one person who's able to actually fulfill all your needs?
Absolutely.
You think so?
I think so. Yeah. Relationship is hard because yes, it takes two, but that one person that can fulfill all your needs is yourself. You have to be a whole, right? When people say I'm looking for my other half, like, no, you're already a whole. You should be looking for another whole. You know, you can't depend on each other. You can't be so codependent. You know, like you have to be you as yourself is a whole person. And you should track yourself to another whole person.
Oh, okay. So let me think. Let me just digest this for a bit. So people who tend to attract the wrong partners, it's probably also because they are having some issues themselves.
They have a void in their life. That's why they track that person that can fill that void. But if you're already self as a whole, then now you're like, okay, you're just adding on to each other's life.
Right. Okay. Because this got me thinking about, like, you know, non-monogamous relationships and like, and I mean, it's obviously not a very Asian thing, right? To just ever think about being in an open, consensual relationship, and it's like, what? Like, but the reality is it exists. And especially in the culture where you come from, like in America, there's a lot of that, and so many different family structures and all. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think people should do whatever makes them happy. It just doesn't work for me. You know, I'm very much of like, I'm very traditional when it comes to it, because I think for me, one of the worst feelings is feeling the feeling of betrayal. And I think when you bring somebody else, a third person, in a relationship, or two people, I think that's the feeling is betrayal in a sense, and you can't be completely like open and honest and bond with that one person. But again, that's just me. And I think, you know, there's other ways of doing things, and you know, people might find happiness in the long term with open relationships, but it's not for me. I think it's just really personal preference, and I think you really have to know yourself to see if that really works for you. But for me, no.
Yeah, because for me as well, I think I'm also very traditional in that sense, and because I've got 2 kids, one is 7 and one's 5, and they're growing up in a world that's so different from before, right? And, you know, family structures are different, and I don't want to like get on the high horse and go like, oh, it's wrong, you shouldn't do this and that, because there are also certain like studies and research that shows that actually non-monogamous relationships can be good and healthier than monogamous relationships. So, you know, I just don't know if you have like personal like friends and all that who actually have successful relationships like that, and it's not necessarily saying that we are for it. You know, it's just giving perspective, and that's what really this whole podcast is about. It's also about exploring different perspectives. It doesn't have to represent what we believe in, but it's to allow people to just sort of know that, oh, there's such a thing, and that not to be too close-minded. And sometimes we can be very we can be very binded by our own beliefs that comes from our past and all that. So yeah, I just wonder if you have any.
Yeah, I actually
encounters.
don't have any close friends who've been who's successful, or even, you know, I've heard from like friends like, oh, this couple is in an open relationship, but again, I don't know how happy they are, because everything's in closed doors, right? So I can't really speak like from a point of view that I know somebody who's been very successful and I'm very happy about it.
Okay, maybe that could be one of the couples in the seasons if you do have.
Maybe let's see. Hey, why not? We can explore if somebody's into that, right?
Right. I mean, because I think there are lessons to be learned from Bling Empire that we may not realize, just given the title of it. And I have to say that as well, because I had that prejudice, so it changed after I watched it. I think I want to move on to this part about you and growing up, because you mentioned in an interview before, like when you first went to US, you stayed in a house with rats on the wall.
Apartment, not a
Apartment.
house.
Oh, in an apartment with like rats on the wall. And now obviously you've come so far, and now you're like, in the show at least we see parties that cost like as much as apartments. Like what is that like? Have you ever felt out of place?
As far as you mean with the parties,
Like-
or with my group of friends?
Yeah, because you
I
know
don't-
you
yeah.
came from a world where the rats on the walls, and now it's like wow, it's all
Yeah.
so.
I don't think I ever felt out of place because money never defines you, right? And I think money gives you options, but it never buys you happiness. When people want things, I think people have to realize when they see people that has everything, they have access to everything, or they have a lot of money, they're very successful. It does not mean they're happy. Right. And, I think with my group of friends, I know the value I bring and to the friend group. So I never really felt like out of place or anything like that. And again, money doesn't define you.
How do you feel about this whole like ranking of wealth, between all the cast members?
We never rank it on our show, but obviously,
The media does
The media
it.
does. And the funny things a lot of time are not even correct. Like apparently Kevin's worth like $29 million on the internet. And, so it's definitely not correct.
So tell us a little bit about what you do outside of like this reality TV series, and otherwise we're just all gonna think like, oh, all you do is just like we break up and get together and break
I
up
wish
again.
that's my life. Like if I don't have to work, that'd be awesome.
Like we don't see you. Like, I don't see you working on,
Yeah.
on the show at all. It's always like you're just meeting Andrew and this and that. And after a while, I was just like, can we just see what she does? Like
Yeah.
the lady boss part, like
Yeah. And I think that's why we're hoping for more and more seasons, because then you can really kind of see the other part of my life. But for me as I'm an entrepreneur. I have a production company. We do mostly scripted stuff, scripted movies and TV shows. And then I've invested in a lot of like really cost-based projects that's very close to my heart. Right now, when I first moved to the U.S., I moved to the area called Bridgeport in Chicago, south side of Chicago, and there's this theater that's like a landmark theater that's been closed for many years. So right now, one of my new projects that we're revamping it right now and turning it into a community center live venue, so the kids in that area and people that in that area can have a place to go to. As well as and I've invested some stuff in Asia as well. So anything that's backed for, I think, women and technology. Right now, there's a fund I invest in called Taja Ventures, as well as She Loves Tech, is the biggest tech women conference in Asia. And I think that's very important to support other Asian female founded companies. And then there's tons other stuff, some real estate projects, and I'm launching a new hot sauce line with my mom.
a what?
A hot sauce line.
Oh.
I love spicy food, and my mom, we're from Kunming, China, and she always make me this dish called 小锅米线, the single pot of noodle, and
I love that.
so I can never find it anywhere. Every place I go to that serves that dish, I always order it and can never get exactly how she makes it.
Oh.
And I asked her what it was, and she was like, oh, it's my secret sauce. I'm like, what secret sauce? I don't really cook. So now, we're kind of, I'm trying to learn to cook more, because she's not getting any younger, and I want to make sure that I'm able to pass on this to the future generation. And so we're building a hot sauce line. I think it's something fun for me and my mom to do together, just because we never really had a project that we do together, so yeah.
Okay, that sounds fun, because I like 过桥米线.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so hard to find it here, like a really good one. I think the one that I had was in Lijiang.
Oh, I've been to
when
Lijiang.
I
It's so beautiful.
when I went with my family. And I don't know if it's just the weather. Sometimes, when you travel, like everything just seems nicer, right? And so I remember the 过桥米线 was so good. And yeah, it brought back a lot of memories.
Do they have any Kunming places here?
Do they? I don't think so.
Ah, okay.
I think not that authentic.
Okay.
Well, business opportunity.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've done so many different things, because I think you started in like insurance, was it? And then
Oh, when I was 18
F&B.
years old, yes.
And then you've done so many different things. Like, was it out of interest or necessity or like passion? What was it?
I've been very fortunate that everything I kind of dab into has been good enough, to at least be successful. And every single one of them has led me to the next thing, right? So I think with insurance, the great thing about, insurance, that when I was 18 years old, that was like one of the only jobs you can find, like when you don't have a college degree, right? And you can make a lot of money and also learn, right? And I think finance is very, very important, especially for young women. I think to how to manage money is very important. And the thing with that I learned insurance is the corporate structure, how to basically work the corporate structure, and how the corporate, I guess culture works. Because that really helped me structure my other business in the future. And also the hustle mentality, being able to pick up, because you're cold calling a lot of people, and because insurance is very based on commissions, not based on salary. So it really pushed me out of my comfort zone.
Which job was it, or which industry was it that really was like the breaking point for you, like in terms of wealth accumulation?
I think is when some of our companies that invested in has sold. I was in food and beverage for a long time because it was out of passion. I loved working in the food and beverage industry, but you're working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you really don't make that much money. And there's so much liability, I guess, with it. But when I sold my restaurant, I was able to, at the time, we started an incubator in Los Angeles that invested in different companies, tech companies, and those did really well. And I still have I think over almost 15 companies that still hasn't exited yet. So we're hoping to in the future.
Like when you say we, like who's this we?
So I have partners with every projects we do. I have partners, and I have really, really great partners I trust. And so you can never do it yourself. You always have to have a really great team.
What qualities do you need then to succeed in this way, like to hustle and to have partners and all that? Like what do we need to get there?
I don't think there's an easy equation for that. I think one of the very important thing is surround yourself with great people and learn how to read people as well. I think that's very important. And don't get me wrong, like nowadays I still read people wrong sometimes, but I think I got better.
Was there like a time that you got burned because you?
I got burned all the time, and I'm still getting burned. But every single opportunity, every single failure, you learn something new and turn it into success. But
it just seems like everything's going great for you. Like when you get burned, like how do you deal with it when you're there?
When you get burned, don't give up, because that's only a setback. And I think learn from this experience and move forward with it. Because we're all human, we're gonna make mistakes, and even I think I'm good at reading people, but it still doesn't. It still happens.
Is there one story you can share, like something a bit more specific?
Oh my goodness, I don't even know. I think I think for me, I've made investments that people lie to me about, and that's one of the things I think is very important to have legal representation. Because your contract it's not protecting you what's happening now. It's protecting you what's going to happen in the future, what might happen in the future. And I think that's one of the things that, everybody should have. You should have legal representation on the projects you do, and make sure the contract is right. Because again, it's not, now can be great, but for the future, you just, it's protecting your future.
You know how we feel sometimes that we look at someone who's got it all, and we're so envious, and we feel like, we're never ever gonna get there. Like how did you ever feel that way when you first started? Like because you came from China, and then you went to a completely foreign country, and you had to start from scratch. How did you find that drive to do it?
Right. I think when you look at other people, you can find motivation in other people, but don't ever compare yourself to other people. Because at the end of the day, you might be comparing your year 1 to someone's year 10. Right, you don't see all the hard work they're putting in, because it's kind of like that graph that's very popular, I think, on social media, is that iceberg, and then there's that little tiny thing. So this is all the hard work you're putting in, but people only see this little tiny part at the beginning, right? And focus your own lane. There's no reason to compare yourself or compete with others. And I think that's one of the things growing up in the Asian culture was that compete when there's room for everybody, and don't again, you're comparing yourself. but you have no idea how much hard work that people has put in other things. And it doesn't mean that they're happy. Like I used to think the highest level of success was, achievements and is measured by how much money you make. But the highest level of success is happiness. It's the balance of that.
But there are plenty of people who work hard and they just like never ever reach that level. How should they sort of reconcile that?
Like there's really not a very clear like equation for that. My goal was never focused on making money. It was always focused on passion, what I want to do. So I think once you find your passion, you can really, if you really focus on it and not give up, you can make it.
How do you find time to do all these different things then? Do you sleep?
Oh no, I love to sleep. I think sleep is my fuel. If I don't get 8 hours of sleep, I get super, super grumpy.
Like, how do you manage it? Like, it sounds like you've got so much on your plate.
But I have a great team around me. I have my assistants, my partners, and it takes an army to build any project. Finding good people around you is very the key.
Are you like the sort that, you have to be like very much involved in everything that you do, or you're the kind that you can just let go and let other people do it?
It's a balance because I don't like to micromanage, because I think if you're micromanaging every department, every person on your team, then you don't have the right people. But at the same time, you're the CEO of your own company. You're the CEO of your life, right? So if you don't oversee it, and you don't have the right idea and you don't give a really clear direction, then it's not going to work either. So I think it's a middle ground. It's finding people who really get your vision and is in line with your morals, your value, and what you want to go, and that can really execute, without you having to be on a day-to-day, micromanage them.
I think I can never be a lady boss.
I think you are a lady boss, though.
Really?
You already are.
Maybe I'm doing the comparing thing. Like maybe I'm comparing myself to what I think a lady boss should be or look like, or what the business should look like. So yeah, I always feel like I don't know how to manage people. I don't know how to like hire people.
I think you have a great team around you, and you are where you are in your career because you are a lady boss. So you're already that.
I've always felt like actors are very passive. Do you agree with that, or do you see that?
Not today, I think. Everybody's very, I think actors and actresses nowadays, they're very three-dimensional. They're businesswomen as well. You're speakers, you have a podcast, you're a mom. That's also a job by itself, by the way. So people think mom is not a job, but being a mom is a full-time and a half job.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I've always felt, maybe here, I don't know what the situation is like in LA and Hollywood, but here we very much, when I say we're passive, it's because we kind of like wait for roles to come by, right? We wait for someone to cast us, and so you can't like do much about it, I guess, or at least that's the culture here. So yeah, that's why I feel it's passive.
But also, like a lot of actors are now producing, right? Because they want to create their own opportunities for them.
Yeah.
And I think in Hollywood, it's a little bit different. It is a little bit, at least it still is actually very, very competitive and aggressive, because there's only few roles for Asians.
Yes.
Nowadays, obviously, there's more and more roles opening up, and we will love to keep seeing that grow. And I think we're only at the very, very beginning, but have more diverse roles behind the camera and in front of the cameras. But back then, when I say back then, it doesn't mean that long ago, literally like 5 years ago. It's so competitive for Asian actors, because there's only few roles, and Asian males always cast as a kung fu master, a nerd. Asian females in Hollywood was very sexualized, I think, right? If you look at Rush Hour, and but nowadays you have roles that are there's a show on Netflix called To All the Boys I've Loved. The main character, she's a normal teenage girl that lives in a normal world, and she's Asian. So we need to have more roles like that.
Do you think like it's ever possible for someone like me to be able to go to Hollywood?
Absolutely.
Like what should I, like, what tips do you have for me?
I think, well, first of all, you're already going to be way ahead than a newcomer in Hollywood. So you have that already, and finding good agents, finding good managers, finding a team that are passionate for you and that are really passionate in building with you. Because I think, a lot of time, that's the hardest part, is finding the team that's as passionate as you are to your own brand.
And how do you attract that?
I think being yourself, and
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to meet a lot of people because it's kind of like a dating game, right? The same thing with, finding a therapist. I say that going back to a therapist, finding an agent, finding a manager, it's a dating game. You gotta,
Right.
take your time. You don't have to sign with the first person that offers you a contract,
Right.
and know how much value you bring as well. And that's another thing I think a lot of actors doesn't realize in Hollywood, is that they bring so much value, and they're like, oh, I'm just gonna, because I would just settle for whoever. If your team's not working hard enough for you, speak up.
Speaking up is really tough, because I've been burned many times here, especially in this culture where I guess you're not encouraged to speak up, right? If
Right.
you speak up, you're difficult. You're a diva. You're yeah. You're just being a bitch.
Right.
You know, like does this happen in the Western culture or no?
Of course it happens. I think there's always the right way to communicate things across. I'm not saying to go like knock on your agent's door at 3 a.m. and scream, on top of your lawns. But there's ways to obviously communicate your needs clearly and in a calm manner over. But, it's kind of like, this is what I need. Communicate that, because if you don't communicate that, you don't give them the chance to improve, right? Communicate it and leave it. And if they don't step up, again, you can do this, maybe twice or 3 times. But if they don't step up, maybe it's not a match.
Wow, this is like a lot to take in, because like I'm I'm looking at you and I think you're so feminine and like masculine at the same time. And some would say the same of me, but then sometimes I feel like I'm in the wrong place because when I'm like that and here it's not the norm. But then like when I look at you, I feel like it's so not unusual. Like it's cool.
But that's also why we need people like you, and normalize it in Asia. Like females, we don't have to, like, we can be a boss lady, we can be very nurtured to our kids, we can be a loving wife, like we can be all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It doesn't have to be defined. Oh, if you work really hard, if you really care about your career, then that means that you have to be an ice queen. You can be both. You can be feminine and masculine at the same time.
And you're now a minority in a country that's, you're not the majority. Like, what is that like? And also, the whole Asian hate thing that's going on. Is it still going on? Like, how do you
Oh,
cope with that?
yeah, Asian hate crime is still going on, and then the weird thing is that when the pandemic first started and the media start picking up and they're, oh my God, this is a new thing, Asian hate crime just starting. I'm like, no, it's been going on for a very, very long time in the US. Just people didn't talk about it. Media nowadays don't really care about it enough to keep picking it up, right? Because there's only smaller outlets, like the Asian outlets, that are still talking about it. Because America, if you can kind of tell, the attention span is about 2 weeks long, and then they move on to something else. So Asian crime is still very, very much going on, and we still have a very long way to go. Yeah, it's very, very it's very sad. And also, I feel so nice to be in Singapore. Honestly, when I'm in LA or in the US, I can't wear any jewelry. I'm very covered up, and you're living in fear. And imagine like old aunties or uncles or grandmas, like walking to the grocery store for them, or going to the bank, something that's normal activity that people shouldn't fear. It's scary. It's scary for them to even go to the grocery store. I call my mom and I'm scared. I'm like, don't go out, don't go out, don't go out. But that's not really a way to live either.
Exactly. So how do you protect yourself
Oh,
if
good.
you can
I
even
mean,
do that?
it's gonna be a long journey, but Asians have to speak up. That's first thing, is awareness and speaking up and reporting these crimes. Because a lot of time, like we said, oh, the reported crimes is so high, but like how many unreported crimes are there? There's so many. Vote. We have to start voting, because the problem with our culture is that we tend to be very closed doors. Like we're like, oh, we just stay in our little community and we don't really vote for what's going on in our city, our district, or our country, but we're putting the wrong people in office. And educate yourself, because I think, like, and I'm very, very guilty of it as well. Growing up, I didn't get in politics. I'm just like, oh, this is just, I very much of like, just live in my own world, right? And if it doesn't affect me, I don't really want to.
It's the Asian thing.
It's the Asian thing.
Like,
but we have to.
Don't create trouble.
Exactly.
Just be good and,
Yeah.
do your own thing.
But we can't keep taking a backseat. We have to speak up, and like we belong there as well, right? Because like, why are we living there like we don't belong there? And why are we letting people treat us like that, And it is very, very scary because people are literally dying every single day, and people don't hear it in the news.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I guess that's something that we would not be able to relate to as much because
Right.
we are the majority here.
Yeah.
And we don't have crimes like that happening. And we don't have guns, and we don't have people walking into schools and shooting kids.
Yeah. And also another problem right now is that because there's no consequences to a lot of the crimes, right? So
Right.
with California right now, with crime rate is so high, like if you break in someone's car, you rob someone, hate crimes, there's not a lot of consequences. So people get arrested, or if they get arrested and then they get let out the next day.
What?
Yeah. There's literally no consequences.
And how can you give them consequences?
Well, by voting the right people in office.
Right, I see. I mean, it doesn't sound like a very desirable place to live in.
We're going backwards. We're totally going backwards. And I never got into politics. I never talked about politics especially openly. But now it's getting so ridiculous, and we're just completely moving backwards. And like people like me, Kang, like we get affected too by Asian hate crimes.
Like how?
So people will scream slur like racist things at us, or King talked about us openly. He was walking in West Hollywood, by the way, still a very nice neighborhood. Somebody threw water at him, because we're Asian.
Oh no.
Yeah. So it doesn't just happen it happens to all of us, but nobody hears about it.
Okay, now we are hearing about it, and I think it's incredibly brave of you guys to and especially for Kane, right, to decide to. He could stay here.
I know. I'm like, why? I'm like, I want to move here.
Well, he could stay here. Like, why does he want to go risk his life there? But it is a bigger market, and it has got a lot more opportunities than we probably don't get here, and I'm sure you learn a lot more there as well than we do here, because everything's kind of a bit more protected here.
Yeah.
Like we would never have to think about, speaking
Safety,
up and
yeah.
safety and this and that. Like, people are lobbying for no guns and this and that. Like we would never, have to do that here.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I think there's always that good and bad to every place.
Yeah, and of course it's the easy way for me to think is let me pack up and move, right? But at the same time, if we don't have people that keep speaking up, keep fighting for it, who's gonna really speak up for those that needs to be spoken up, and then the consequences is the people who have no choice. They're already there, right? Especially a lot of the older generation.
It really sounds to me like you're not a quitter for anything.
Well, there's only two choices, right? You either keep fighting or you quit. But I think quitting is not really in my nature,
Yeah, I see that, and I think it's been really inspiring talking to you, because I've learned from you about the therapy and about the attachment styles, and how sometimes knowing ourselves can help us in many, many ways in our lives as well, relationships, work, and just our personal mental well-being. Well, is there anything that I didn't manage to draw it from you that you are really passionate about to talk about?
I think I'm pretty good. I think I thank you for asking all the great questions.
Yeah, because sometimes it's about finding the right spark, right, for you to share some things about you that you normally don't talk about, and that's the beautiful thing about having conversations that I really enjoy. When I sit together with my husband and my other couple friends, and then sometimes you realize you talk about your relationship and that you otherwise wouldn't talk about,
Right.
because of that chemistry. So I do wonder sometimes, if there's anything that you don't get asked, because a lot of it is always centered around Bling Empire and your character in it and your relationship, and because for me as well, sometimes I wish reporters would ask me questions that that just deviates from all these usual stuff.
Yeah.
And I just, that's why I wanted to be able
Thank
to
you.
allow you to
Thank
do
you.
that.
Yeah, no. I think it's so great everything you asked, and I think one of the things people also have to realize that I'm working in progress. I don't have it all figured out at all,
Yeah.
but I'm always willing to learn. I'm always still seeking knowledge, right? And by talking to you as well, I'm learning something new, and that's what life is about. And I think also another thing that's very important was that learning to set boundaries and learning to say no. Because again, in the Asian culture, I never learned to say no, because when I say no, I feel like I'm letting someone down, and I don't know how to set clear boundaries. But no is a complete sentence. No is as important as saying yes.
Oh, I'm so glad you said yes to this.
And thank you for asking me.
Well, thank you for being so game to come on the show. We're so happy to have you. We've got like fans all around, and it's been great talking to you. And you're like how I imagine you'd be.
Oh, thank you.
Off camera and like in person. You're just how I imagine you'll be.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
It's been
you
really
so
fun.
Thank you so much. We know that our listeners can find you on Bling Empire, which is on Netflix, right? Season 1 and 2 is out. Where else can they find you?
I think the easiest way is on social media. Instagram is @KallieMealy, and I'm just learning how to do Twitter. It's very, very hard.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Kelly. Is there any takeaway from our conversation that you'd like to share? Your thoughts, your questions? Leave them in the comments below. An audio version of this podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. I'm Joanne Pei, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!